Alright, we're going to run through the unit review quickly. We're going to look at number 1, where we have a trapezoid that's cut in half. Now, what they want you to see is something you're not really going to understand until next unit, and that's fine. It just is what it is. So what they want you to see is that the way we find the length of the base of this is that we find the average of our two bases, which, like I said, most of you won't get until next unit. But the way we find the length is we add 6 and we add 10 and we divide by 2, so that gives us 8. So I would be fine if you just put A equals BH, because that's how you find the area of a rectangle. But what they wanted you to write is 8 times 8. And there's really not any way for you to have known that just yet. So, remember I told you focus on the trapezoid. There's a question like this on your test. We're focusing on the trapezoid because this is not something we get yet, which is fine. So now we're going to find the area of the trapezoid. It gives us the formula A equals 1/2 times B1 plus B2 times the height. So we add our 1/2, we add our bases, which is 6 plus 10. We multiply it times the height, which is 8. So I get 1/2 of 16 is 8 times 8. I wind up with the same formula ultimately as I would with the rectangle. And that's what they're trying to show you. So my answer is the area equals 64 centimeters squared, because we're dealing with area. Let's look at number 2 and 3. Number 2, we have a parallelogram. It's not a rectangle because we have 2 slanted sides. Okay, we've talked about we don't use slant when we find the area. So the equation that can be used is the area equals base times height. To make it an equation and include numbers, it would be area equals my height, which is 15, times 27, which gives us 405. Area equals 405 centimeters squared. Number 3, we go from a parallelogram with slants to a rectangle, and what they want you to see is that you can cut this piece off the parallelogram and move it right there, and you wind up with the same with the rectangle. So they want you to notice, and you already know this, that they have the same formula. Area equals base times height. All we did is move part of it. Down here it tells us the height is 2.3, the base is 4.2, so we have area equals BH. Area equals 2.3 times 4.2. We get 9.66 inches squared. Number 4. Okay, so on number 4 we have one of those geometry questions without a shape. Always draw the shape, it just makes it easier to see it. So I know I'm dealing with a triangle. I don't know that it's an equilateral, but it's a triangle, and it doesn't matter as long as I have a representation. Has an area of 36 inches. The height of the cloth is 12, so I need to know how many inches. I don't know how long my base is. So I'm going to use my formula, area equals BH. I'm going to plug in what I do know. I know the area. I know the height. So I essentially have 12 times B here. 36 equals 12 times B. And we all know that in order to get my variable by itself, draw a line, divide both sides by 12. So I get 3 equals the base. So it would be 3 inches, since we're dealing with inches there. Number 5. Jimmy filled an aquarium with water one night. Good for Jimmy. He only filled it 3/4 full. Alright? So now we need to find the volume of water, not the volume of the aquarium, the volume of water. To find the volume of the aquarium, we would do volume equals length times width times height. And let's go ahead and plug in. We don't know the volume. I'm going to call the length 1.5. I'm going to call the width 8. And the height 10. So length times width times height. That's going to give me the amount of water that the tank will hold. But what I'm told is that if I divided this tank into 4 pieces, it's only this full. It is not all the way full. So I need to know the volume of the water. It does tell me it's 3/4. Remember the other day we talked about quarters being 4. So that means it is 3 out of 4 over the way full, whatever units it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this entire thing. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put a multiply sign there because I don't want to confuse you. So I'm multiplying 3/4 times this entire thing. I would go ahead and do the whole thing first, do this part first, just because we know how to do it. We know how to find the volume. The volume equals 80. 8 times 10 is 80. 80 times 1 is 80. 80 times a half is 40. So it is 3/4 times 120. Let's bring this up here where we have some room. 3/4 times 120. Put 120 over 1. As always, multiply straight across. I get 360 over 4. I'm going to divide. So 4 goes into 36 9 times. 4 goes into 0 0 times. I have 90 cubic inches. Oh, you know what? I just made a mistake. I just realized it. This is not 1.5. It should actually be 18 inches. So we're going to do that again. It's not quite as easy as I thought it was. It's going to be 1.5. Volume is 1.5 times 18 times 10. Volume is 1.5 times 180. Volume is 180 times 1 is 180. Well, half of 180 is 90. So the volume is 270 cubic inches, but I need 3/4 of that. So 270 times 3/4, because I only have 3/4 of it. We'll put this over 1. Top times top, bottom times bottom. So now I have 810 divided by 4, which gives me 2, 0, 2. Put it in the house just to make sure. 810 divided by 4 is 2, 0, 2.5. 202.5 cubic inches is how much water. The whole tank holds 270. The water now occupies 202.5. Number 6. I know this was a little confusing for some of you. When the arrow doesn't go all the way across, it's only that part. So we have, it's not done very well on this one. That's okay. 0.75 for this, 0.75 for this. And we need to know the area of the triangle. Area is 1/2 base times height. Now, some of you said, but Mr. Mack, my base is already in half. Do I need to put a half there? And you don't. You can either plug in area equals 1/2 times 1.5, which is what you would get when you add those together, times 2, or if you recognize that it was already half, area is 0.75 times 2. Either way, the area winds up being 1.5 meters squared. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all can't see that answer. So there's the answer, 1.5 meters squared. Number 7. Alright. what is the sum of the area of the rectangle and the area of the parallelogram? So we have area equals base times height. Area equals base times height. So the area of this is 6.2 times 5.3, which gives us 32.86 meters squared. Now, I'm going to use 2.5 and 1.8 because we remember that we don't use the slants. So area is 2.5 times 1.8, and I get 4.5. But I'm not done. I haven't answered the question, and it wants to know the sum. I have to add those together. So I get 6. 37.36 meters squared. You want to see adding it together? 32.86 and 4.5. I know that looks weird, but remember, when we add and subtract decimals, we have to line them up. So that's how I got this. A rectangular prism. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and draw it. Even if it's bad, I'm going to draw it. Just so I have a shape. Rectangular prism has a volume, length times width times height, of 3,136 meters cubed. It has a length of 14 and another dimension of 16. We're going to assume that's height, so we don't know the width. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply 14 times 16 and get 224. Okay, and in order to get my W by itself, I divide both sides by 224. And whoever wrote this was really hung up on 1.5s. We get 1.5 meters because these cancel out, so we are left with, that's not right. We are left with 14 is the answer. I apologize for that. Okay, so it should be 14. W equals 14. That makes more sense. Getting into the thousands. Alright, so your W is 14. Let's look at number 9. And I need to grab a star chart real quickly. So we're going to measure this shape. We're going to measure it in to the nearest half inch is what it tells me. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to measure all the sides just so I have everything down. I have 2.5. And that's a little bit closer. It's closer to 4 than 3.5, so we're going to put 4 there. And it's right at 3.5, so we're going to put 3.5 there. And measure our little part, and it's about 1.25. I'm going to call it 1. You can call it 1.5 if you want. That's fine. So, now we talked about our formula being area is 1/2 B1 plus B2 times the height. And what we said is our B1 and B2 is our parallel lines. These are our parallel lines. Be careful that you don't use top and bottom, because this is a slant. And we don't use slants for area. So area is 1/2, 1 plus 2.5 times 3.5. So area is 1/2, 3.5 times 3.5.